of Science and Technology, Part 1. I am Vimla Verma from Vile Parle East MPS Secondary. Today we are going to continue chapter number 8, Metallurgy, Module 3. So you can see the objective of this chapter on the screen. Out of these, we have already finished physical properties of metals, physical properties of non-metals, chemical properties of metals, chemical properties of non-metals, and reactivity series of metals. And you can see here ionic compounds, various concepts of metallurgy, theory and applications of extraction of various types of metals. These topics are left. So in this module, we are going to learn ionic compounds, properties ionic compounds, metallurgy, occurrence of metals, and basic principles of metallurgy. So let's begin. So before that, we start the new topics. Let's revise what we have studied in the previous module. We've studied physical properties of metals and non-metals. We saw that metals given colored flame with flame test. Metals react with oxygen to form corresponding metal oxide. With water, metals form oxide with liberation of hydrogen gas. Metals react with dilute sulfuric or hydrochloric acid to form sulfate or chloride salts with liberation of hydrogen gas. Nitrate salts are formed on reaction of metals with nitric acid. The arrangement of metals in increasing or decreasing order of reactivity is called the reactivity series of metals. Metals, they react with non-metals to form ionic compounds. Non-metals, they react with oxygen to form acidic or neutral oxide. Generally, non-metals do not react with water or dilute acids except for halogens. Non-metals react with hydrogen at certain conditions, temperature, pressure, catalyst, etc. Okay. Now moving on to today's topic, that is ionic compounds. Let's see what are ionic compounds. The compounds formed from two units, namely cation and anion, are called ionic compounds. The cation and anion being oppositely charged, there is an electrostatic force of attraction between them. This force of attraction between cation and anion is called as the ionic bond. As you can see here, we have taken an example of sodium atom and chloride atom. Okay, so sodium atom, you can see the structure here. It has 2 electrons in the first shell, 8 electrons in the second shell, and in the third shell there is only 1 electron. And if we look at the chlorine atom, you can see here its electronic configuration is 2, and in the 8 in the second shell, and 7 electrons in the outermost shell. You can see here 1 electron, it is given by the sodium to the chlorine, so that sodium gets outermost shell complete, and chlorine also gets outermost shell complete. And because of which, as you can see, sodium ion atom, it is giving 1 electron to the chlorine atom. Now it has the outermost electronic configuration 2 in the first shell and 8 electrons in the second shell. And as it has given 1 electron to the chlorine, its outermost shell, that is the third shell, it is lost now. It has only 2 shells. Because of giving 1 electron to the chlorine, now it acquires 1 positive charge here, and it becomes sodium cation. And fluorine, as it takes 1 electron of sodium, it gets electronic configuration 288. That is, its outermost shell is complete now. And as 1 extra charge, a negative charge is increased over it, that's why it forms chloride anion, that is 1 negative charge over chlorine atom. Right? So you can write down the reaction like this: sodium atom plus chlorine atom, they form sodium cation and chloride anion, and both of them, they are bonded with the electrostatic force of attraction, and they form a compound called as ionic compound. Why ionic compound? Because this compound, sodium chloride NaCl, is formed from 2 ions, one positive ion and second negative ion, that is cation and anion, right? So you can see here there is a ionic bond formed here. This force of attraction between cation and anion is called as the ionic bond. Now let's see The number of cations and anions in a compound and the magnitude of electric charge on them is such that the positive and negative charges balance each other. As you can see here, this is a sodium chloride crystal. Here you can see sodium atom. It has one positive charge and it becomes sodium cation and chloride anion. Okay, so here it says that the number of charges, whether it is positive charge or negative charge, both are equal in number. That's why they are balancing each other. So that's what it is written here. The number of electric charges in a one molecule of sodium chloride, they are equal and they are balancing each other. And as a result, an ionic compound is electrically neutral. Ionic compounds, they are crystalline in nature. You can see some of the compounds they are given here. You can see their crystal structures shown here. They are crystalline in nature. The surfaces of crystalline substances have definite shape and are smooth and shiny. You can see here this is a sodium chloride molecule. So here they have definite shape and smooth and shiny. Why they have definite shape and they are smooth and shiny? Because they have regular arrangement of ions in the solid ionic compounds, and which is responsible for their crystalline nature. You can see here the chloride ion, which is shown by green color, sodium ion it is shown by blue color. You can see they have a regular arrangement of atoms. Sodium and chloride ions, they are alternately arranged in a particular order. That's why they have a particular shape and they have a crystalline structure. The arrangement of ions is different in different ionic compounds. So this arrangement of ions will be different in different compounds. For example, the potassium chloride, magnesium chloride, sodium chloride, all of these are the different ionic compounds. So they will have different arrangement of ionic compounds. And therefore the shape of their crystals are different. The main factor that determines the general arrangement of ions in a crystal is the attractive force between oppositely charged ions and the repulsive force between the similarly charged ions. So as we know that like charges they repel each other and opposite charges they attract each other. So in the crystal structure, as you can see here, sodium ion it is positively charged and chloride ions they are negatively charged. So both of them they are oppositely charged. So there will be attraction between these ions. But if we talk about chloride and chloride ions, as they have similar charges, so they will repel each other. There will be a repulsive force between them. So here in a crystal structure, if we observe, there are two forces working together. That is the attractive forces between the opposite charges and repulsive forces between the similar charges. And because of these two forces, the crystal structure is formed. Okay. So because of this general crystalline structure has negative ions arranged around the positive ion. You can see here around the positive ions, they are surrounded by the negative ions, right? Because opposite charges, they attract each other, right? Now, two of the important factors responsible for a certain crystal structure are as follows: size of positively and negatively charged ions, magnitude of electric charge on the ions. The electrostatic attraction in the neighboring ions with opposite charges is very strong. So we can see here the opposite charges they attract each other with a very strong force, and because of which the melting points of the ionic compounds they are very high. And also the ionic compounds they are very hard and brittle. If we look at this chart here, you can see there lots of compounds are written here: water, zinc chloride, magnesium chloride, sodium chloride, sodium bromide, potassium chloride, and magnesium oxide. You can see what are the nature here. Here water, it has a covalent bonding, so it is a non-ionic compound, but rest of the compounds given here, they are ionic in nature. And if we are going to look their melting and boiling points, we can observe here water's melting point is 0 degrees Celsius, whereas zinc chloride, which is an ionic compound, its melting point is very high, that is 290 degrees Celsius. As we are moving downwards, we can see magnesium oxide, it has the highest melting point, that is 2852 degrees Celsius. In the same way, the ionic compounds they have also high boiling point because of strong force of attraction between the oppositely charged ions. Now let's perform an activity to understand more about the properties of ionic compounds. So what we need here in the apparatus: metal spatula, burner, carbon electrodes, beaker, cell, lamp, press key, electrical wires, etc. And what are the chemicals required here? Sodium chloride, barium chloride, water. Okay. So here basically two activities are given here. We are going to perform first activity and after that we will perform the second activity. Let's see the first activity. What we have to do, the procedure here is observe the above samples. So whatever the sample is given to you, the sodium chloride, barium chloride, we have to observe the sample. What is its physical state? What is its color? Whether it is crystalline or not crystalline. We have to observe the sample given to us. Then what next we have to do? Place sample of one of the above salts on the spatula and heat it on the flame of the burner. As you can see, we have to take the sample of the salt on the spatula. Okay, a spatula is like a spoon, and we have to keep it on the burner, and we have to observe the change in the salt. Okay, and we have to repeat the same procedure with the other salts also, whatever the number of samples are given to us. Now let's see the observation. So the first we have to observe the sample given to us, how it looks. So we can see the sample of sodium chloride. Everyone knows about sodium chloride. It is the common salt that we eat every day. We use in the cooking, which gives us a salty taste to our food. So sodium chloride and potassium chloride are having a crystalline structure. You can see here, this is the sodium chloride, the salt that we eat it every day, and this is potassium iodide. Both are white in color. Both are crystalline in structure, and at the room temperature they are solids. And when heated on a flame, these salts they do not melt, which indicates that they have very high melting point. Okay. Now let's move on to the second activity. In the second activity, what we have to do, assemble an electrolytic cell by using a beaker and connecting the carbon electrodes to the positive and negative terminal of the cell. You can see the picture here. This is the beaker. Inside the beaker, the salt solution is kept here, and this is the electrodes given here. One is positive electrode and the other is negative electrode, and both of these electrodes they are connected to a electrical cell in order to provide electricity. Electricity is supplied through these electrical cells, and a bulb is connected here, and there is a plug key which is used to on or off the electrical supply in the circuit. Okay, so this is the electrical setup. We have to dip these electrodes in the solution of any one of the salts. So various salts are provided to us, and we have to make solution of these salts, and we have to keep these salts in different beakers, and we have to just move on this electrode setup to one beaker and from one beaker to other beaker. And do you see the lamp glowing? And we have to observe that in which beaker the bulb glows. Check this with other salts as well. So what we are going to observe in this, when the electrodes are placed in the solutions of samples like sodium chloride, potassium iodide, barium chloride, the electric bulb glows. This electric bulb, it will not glow in every solution. Only in some solutions it will glow. Why it glows? This means that salt solutions conduct electricity. Depending on the concentration of the solution, battery and voltage, the intensity of the glow differs. Ionic compounds, they conduct electricity in aqueous state as well as in fused state. So let's begin with the general properties of ionic compounds. What are the general properties? The attractive force between the positively and the negatively charged ions is strong. So the ionic compounds exist in solid and are hard. So as I told you, the positively and negatively charged ions, they have a very strong force of attraction between them, and that makes the ionic compounds very strong, and they exist in solid state. The ionic compounds are brittle and can be broken into pieces by applying pressure. You can see this is a crystal of ionic compound. It is very hard. Okay. And when we look at the internal structure, how the ions they are arranged in a compound, you can see how in a particular arrangement in a regular way, the ions they are arranged together, and they are giving a particular shape to the compound. And if we want to break them, if we are hammering them, what happens? The strong bond between them, it breaks down, and because of which the crystal structure also it breaks down into pieces. And that's why ionic compounds, they are brittle. The intermolecular force of attraction is high in ionic compounds and large energy is required to overcome it. Therefore, the melting and boiling points of ionic compounds, they are very high. Ionic compounds, they are water soluble, they easily dissolve in water, as we have seen that if you take common salt and you dissolve in water, it easily dissolves in the water. Okay, this shows that all the ionic compounds, they are easily soluble in water. This is because the water molecules orient in a particular manner around the ions separated by dissociation process. So here you can see this is a sodium chloride or any ionic compound where positively and negatively charged cation and anions are present, and when we dissolve them in water, you can see these are the water molecules which are shown by red and white color. Here hydrogen, it is represented by red color, white color, and oxygen is represented by red color, right? So these are the water molecules and these are the ionic compounds. And when ionic compounds get dissolved in water, what happens here? The positive ions and negative ions, they dissociate, they get separated, and they get surrounded by the water molecules. You can see this is a positive ion, it is surrounded by the water molecules. In the same way, the negative ions, it also gets surrounded by the water molecules. As a result of this, a new force of attraction is established between the ion and the surrounding water molecules. So here a new force of attraction is established between what? Between these ions and the water molecules. And the original intermolecular attraction, it breaks down. So here it was the original intermolecular attraction, it breaks down, and a new intermolecular force of attraction is formed between the ions and the water molecules. And aqueous solution of ionic compounds are formed. And as a result, aqueous solution of ionic compounds are formed. So what we have to remember, that ionic compounds, they dissociate into their respective ions when they are dissolved in water, and because of which they conduct electricity. Ionic compounds are, however, insoluble in solvents like kerosene and petrol. So, if we are going to dissolve salt in kerosene or petrol, it will not dissolve in it. Okay. This is because, unlike water, a new attractive force cannot be established in these solvents. Now, the next property of ionic compounds, the ionic compounds, they cannot conduct electricity when in solid state, as the ions cannot leave their places. So, ionic compounds, they are good conductor of electricity only when they are dissolved in water. If they are in solid state, they are bad conductor of electricity. They cannot conduct electricity because the ions, they are not able to move. However, in the fused state or molten state, they can conduct electricity, as in this state the ions are mobile. The aqueous solution of ionic compounds conduct electricity as they contain dissociated ions. As you can see here, the electrolytic cell. In the electrolytic cell, if I dissolve sodium chloride, it will dissociate into sodium and chloride ion. You can see the red color sodium ions and blue color chloride ions. And you can see here in the electrolytic cell, electrodes, that is cathode negatively charged and anode positively charged. And we know that opposite charges, they attract. So the positive ions, that is sodium ions, they will be attracted towards the negative electrode, that is cathode. And the chloride ions, which are negative charged, they will attracted towards the anode, that is positively charged. And because of this movement of charges, the circuit gets completed and electric current flows through the circuit, and the electric bulb, it glows. On passing current through the solution, the ions move to the oppositely charged electrodes and the bulb glows. Due to the electrical conductivity infused and dissolved state, the ionic compounds, they are also called as electrolytes. What is the other name given to the ionic compounds? Electrolytes. Why electrolytes? Because in their fused state or in molten state, they are able to conduct electricity. Okay. So as you can see here, three pictures are shown. One beaker, it contains the solution of baking powder. The second, it contains solution of sugar, and the third, it contains salt. Okay, so we can see here in the salt solution the bulb is flowing, and in the baking powder solution the bulb is flowing. But in case of sugar, the bulb is not glowing. That means the baking powder and salt solution, they are conducting electricity, they are electrolytes, and you can say that they are ionic compounds as well. But sugar, it is a non-ionic compound, and that's why it is not able to conduct electricity, and the bulb is not glowing. Okay, so I hope all of you understood about the properties of ionic compounds. Now we are moving on to the main topic of the chapter, that is called as the metallurgy. Now you can see that in the name itself, the word is given metal. That means this metallurgy is the process which is related to the metal. So here we are going to basically focus on metals. The science and technology regarding the extraction of metals from ores and their purification for the use is called metallurgy. So we have to learn the definition here about the metallurgy. What is metallurgy? It is a branch of science in which we study the extraction of metals, how metals they are extracted from their ores and how they are purified, okay, for their use. It is called metallurgy. As you can see, we are using lots of metals in our day-to-day life like aluminium, gold, silver, but they do not naturally occur in their pure form, right? So we need to purify them before use. So the whole process of extracting them, purifying them, and make them able to use is comes in the metallurgy. So that we are going to study here. So metallurgy is divided into two broad categories. First one is chemical metallurgy and the second one is physical metallurgy. So chemical metallurgy is chiefly concerned with the reduction and oxidation of metals and chemical properties of metals. In physical metallurgy, we mainly focus on the mechanical and physical properties of metals and the physical performances of the metal. Now, let's see the occurrence of metals in nature. As we know, the reactivity series we just studied in our previous module. So, if you look at the reactivity series, in the reactivity series, the metals which are at the top position, they are highly reactive. But the metals which are at the lower position, they are very less reactive or least reactive. So according to their reactivity, the metals they exist in nature either in free state or in combined state. So most unreactive metals, so unreactive metals, they are present at the lower part of the reactivity series. They are not affected by air, water, and other natural factors generally occur in free state. As we can see here, these metals which are at lower part of the reactivity series, they are least reactive. So they do not react with air, water, or any other natural factors. So because of which they exist in free state in nature, they are not found in combined state. For example, silver, gold, platinum, all these metals they exist in free state. But when we talk about the most reactive metals which are present at the topmost position of the reactivity series, as they are very highly reactive, it is not possible for them to exist in free state. That's why they are found in combined state, right? For example, is such as oxides, carbonates, sulfides, or nitrites. For example, you can see sodium, calcium, copper, aluminium. You can see all the metals in the reactivity series: potassium, calcium, sodium, magnesium, aluminium. All of them, they are very reactive, right? That's why they exist in nature in their combined state. Now let's see how the metals they exist in their natural form. We metals found in nature in free state. Which metals they are found in free state? Which are less reactive, or you can say the least reactive metals. For example, silver, gold, platinum. You can see here in the rock. You can see these silver linings. These silver linings they show that this metal it contains silver, and here this golden part. This is the mineral of gold in which the rock contains gold. Here, same it is also present in the rock. So this is the natural form in which these metals they exist in nature. And what we have to do? We have to separate. these pure metals from these rocks. And this whole processing of extracting metals from their rocks is called as the metallurgy. Okay, so all these silver, gold, platinum, they exist in free state in the rock. Now let's see some of the metals which found in nature in combined state. You can see here, this is the zinc blende. This is the mineral of zinc. And here you can see if we look at its chemical formula, it contains zinc and sulfur. So it is not the pure form of zinc. It exists in combined form. So we need to separate sulfur from the zinc in order to get the pure sulfur. Right? Here in the same way, we can see aluminium. Aluminium, it is obtained from its ore that is called bauxite ore. And if we look at the composition, aluminium, it exists in the form of oxide. So in order to get the pure aluminium, we need to remove oxygen from the ore, right? This is the cinnabar ore of mercury. We get mercury from this ore, and you can see this bluish color copper sulfide ore, which is combined with sulfur, right? So we get copper from this ore. Now let's see some metal extraction sites in India. In India, around 10 to 11% economy is supported by mining industry. You can see Kolar Gold Mines, Karnataka. So these are the gold fields from which golds are extracted. Then here, this is the copper mining in Rajasthan. You can see these rocks, they have greenish in color. This greenish color, it is the copper present in these rocks. And from these rocks, by the process of metallurgy, we extract pure copper. In the same way, you can see here, this is a limestone mining in Gujarat, from where we can extract limestone. Now let's come to know about the some terms which are given in the chapter. That is minerals, ores, and gangue. So what are minerals? The compounds of metals that occur in nature along with the impurities are called minerals. And what are the ores? The minerals from which the metal can be separated economically are called ores. And what are gangues? Metal contain many type of impurities such as soil, sand, and rocky substances along with the metal compounds. These impurities are called gangue. So all these three definitions, they are very important. It can come in your exam for just 1 mark question. Define the following terms. Now, let's see how the metals can be extracted. Metals, they can be extracted from their ores by means of various methods of separation. The process of extraction of metal in pure state from the ores is called a part of metallurgy. So ores, they can be taken out from the mines, and the gangue is usually separated from the ore at the site itself by various methods. So from the mines, when we extract the minerals, we get the ores from there, and as it is present in the rocks. So the rocks, they may contain soil and other waste materials along with that. That is called as gangue. So at the place of site itself, some of the gangue particles are removed from various methods. Then the ores are carried out to the place where metals are produced. Their metals are extracted in pure form. Then metals are further purified by different methods of purification. This entire process is called metallurgy. Now let's see what are the basic principles of metallurgy. The basic principle of metallurgy, it includes basically three stages. The first stage is the concentration of ore. When the concentration of ore is done, we do the extraction of metals, and after extraction of metals, we do the refining of metals. So these are the three steps which we follow while doing the metallurgy of a particular given ore. Okay, so what we do in the concentrate ore, the process of separating gangue from the ores is called concentration of ore. Gangue, we know that the unwanted particles like sand, soil, or rocky material present in it, that is called gangue, and that we can remove by physical processes, right? So this is the concentration ore of ore. When the gangue particle is removed from the ore, we do the extraction of metals. Here, what we do in the extraction of metals, concentrated ores are converted to other forms like oxides and sulfides so that it will be easy to extract them. And then the oxides are reduced to get the pure metal. So in the second step, In the extraction of metals, we get the pure metal, but it is not necessary that pure metal is 100% pure. So we do the refining of metals in the third stage, and in this stage we do the electrolysis method, and it is used to obtain pure metals from the impure metals. So at the third stage, after refining of metals, we get 100% pure metals. So all these three steps we are going to study in detail. So let's start the first one, that is concentration of ore. Okay. So in the concentration of ore, it is the process of separating gangue from the ores, and this is called concentration of ore. In this process, the concentration of the compound of desired metal is increased. Various ways are used for this process. However, exact way to be used depends upon the physical properties of the metal present in ores and the gangue. It also depends on the reactivity of the metal and the facilities available for the purification. Various factors that could be responsible for the environmental pollution are also considered. That means whatever processes we are using for the concentration of ore, that should not harm our environment also. That point is also considered. Now let's see what are the general methods for the concentration of ore. So in the concentration of ore, there are basically four methods that we are going to study. The first one is separation based on gravitation. Okay. And this process, it is further divided into two types: Wilfrid table method, hydraulic separation method, and the second method is magnetic separation method, flotation
Okay.
method, and leaching method.
Yes,
Okay.
Kavi.
So in this module, we are going to study about these two methods: separation based on gravitation and magnetic separation method. Okay. So let's see the separation based on gravitation. So as you can see the word here, gravitation. Gravitation means it's related to the gravity. Okay. Gravity here you can see the heavy particles of ores, they can be easily separated from the lighter particles of gangue by gravitational method. This process can be carried out by this way. You can see here this process is applicable for the ores which are heavier than their gangue particles. If the ore is denser and the your gangue particle is lighter, then this process
Dava
is
gaya.
applicable to your ore, right? So denser ore particles, they settle in groups on a vibrating table, and gangue particles, as they are lighter, they are washed down by water. Let's see how this happens. So the first process it is given here is Wilfy table method. Wilfy table method is made by fixing narrow and thin wooden rifles on inclined surface. You can see this is an inclined surface on which narrow thin wooden ripples. You can see narrow thin wooden ripples like staircase. One step below their second step, then third step, fourth step, fifth step, sixth step, seventh step. Like this, in a stepwise, these narrow thin wooden ripples are arranged. The table is kept one continuously, and this table is continuously kept vibrating. And the powdered ore obtained from the ball mill. Ball mills, it is used to grind the ore into finely powder form. Okay, so the ore which is originally was in rock form, it gets grinded and powdered in ball mill, and from the ball mill it is poured on the Wilfy table. You can see
Ma'am,
the
can you
crushed
please
ore, it is
tell the students to mute themselves?
okay. So you can see here on these uh, from the ball mill, it is poured on the table, the crushed ore, and a stream of water. It is also released from the upper side. Why this is done? So that the lighter gangue particles, they should be washed away along with the water. And as here the minerals which are using here, ores, they are heavy in weight, they get settled down in the grooves. You can see here the grooves are made. They, because of their heavy nature, they get settled down here, and the gangue particles, they are lighter in weight, so they get washed away. Right? You can see these are the gangue particles which are washed away with the water, and they are collected downwards. Okay. and the ore which we are using, which were settled in the groove, because of the vibrating nature of those Wilfy table, it gets collected here, and the collected ore we can collect it from here. Okay. Now you can see here, this is the picture of a Wilfy table. So the heavier particles, they are blocked by the wooden ripples and get collected on the slit between them. In these particles, proportion of minerals is more and proportion of gangue is less, because the lighter gangue is washed away along with the water. This is the first method. Now look at the second method, which is based on gravitation method. This is called hydraulic separation method. So the hydraulic separation method, it is based on the working of a mill. There is a tapering vessel which is similar to used in a grinding mill. It opens in a tank-like container. You can see this is a tank-like container, okay, which is that is tapering at the lower side. You can see here it is tapering at the lower side, and the tank has an outlet for water. You can see this is the outlet of water from water can come outside from the container, and from the lower side there is inlet of water. From the lower side the water is supplied in the container. Now finally grounded ore is released in the tank from the top part. You can see here this is the powdered ore which is released in the tank. And from the lower part, a forceful jet of water is introduced in the tank from the lower side. Gangue particles, as we already started in the beginning, that the gangue particles here, they are lighter in weight, and the ores, they are heavy in weight, right? So as the gangue particles, they are lighter, therefore they are flown away along with the water jet, because we can see here there is a jet of water which is flowing from the lower part, and because of which the lighter gangue particles, they flow away along with the water and they get collected outside. Okay. And heavy particles of the ore, they, as they are heavy, they get moved downwards due to gravitational force, and heavy particles of the ore are collected at the bottom from the lower side of the tank, and you can separate the concentrated ore from the lower part. This method is based on the law of gravitation, wherein particles of the same size are separated by their weight with the help of water. So lighter gangue particles, they are removed along with the water as they are lighter, and the heavy ore particles, they are concentrated at the lower part, and we can collect it separately. So these are the two methods, Wilfley table method and hydraulic separation method, which work on the gravitational method. Okay. Now the next one is magnetic separation method. As you can see here, the name word comes here, magnetic. That means it is related to the magnetic property. So this method, it requires an electromagnetic machine, and this is basically applicable for the ores which are magnetic in nature, like iron ore. Okay, so they are magnetic in nature, so it is applicable for such kind of ores. So you can see the figure here. The main part of this machine are two types of iron rollers. You can see there are two iron rollers. This is the one and this is the second iron roller. And there is a conveyor belt moving continuously around these two iron rollers. One of the rollers is non-magnetic. You can see this is the first roller. This is non-magnetic in nature. And the second roller, it is made up of a magnetic material. Okay. And the conveyor belt moving around the rollers, it is also non-magnetic. Basically, it is made up of either leather or brass. The powdered ore is poured on the conveyor belt near the non-magnetic roller. And here you can see when the powdered ore, it moves on the conveyor belt, because as I told you, it is used for the ores which are magnetic in nature. So it contains the magnetic ore and along with that non-magnetic gangue particles, right? So when the mixture of gangue and the magnetic ore, it moves over the conveyor belt, what happens? You can see here the non-magnetic material, it gets collected in the one container, and the magnetic material, it gets collected in the second container. But how does it work? As we know that the ore is magnetic in nature, right? So it will get attracted towards the magnet because this belt roller it is made of magnetic material. Okay, so the non-magnetic gang particles, they will not get attracted towards it, and because of this they will get collected in this container. But magnetic ore, it will get attracted towards the magnetic roller, and because of which it will get attracted towards it, it will stick to the conveyor belt, and it will get collected in the second container. Okay, so the particles of the ore that are magnetic are attracted towards the magnetic roller, and therefore they stick to the magnetic roller and they are carried further along the belt and fall in the collector vessel placed in away from the magnetic roller. The particles of the non-magnetic ingredients of the ore fall in the collector vessel near the magnetic roller. In this way, the magnetic and non-magnetic ingredients in the ore can be separated depending on their magnetic nature. For example, cassiterate is a tin ore containing the non-magnetic ingredient tannic oxide and the magnetic ingredient ferrous tungsten. These are separated by electromagnetic methods. Okay, I hope all of you understood all these methods. Now let's summarize what we have studied today. The compounds we studied about the ionic compounds first. The compounds formed by cation and anion are called ionic compounds. Ionic compounds, they are crystalline, they have definite shape and smooth and shiny. The structure of crystal, it depends upon size. Okay. Ionic compounds, they exist in solid state and are hard. They are brittle. They have high melting and boiling points. And ionic compounds, they are water soluble. They cannot conduct electricity in solid state but can conduct electricity in molten state or in aqueous state. Metallurgy can be defined as a process that is used for the extraction of metals in their pure form. High and moderately reactive metals occur as compounds and less reactive metals occur in free state. The minerals from which the metal can be separated economically are called ores. Ores contain many types of impurities such as soil, sand, and rocky substances, along with other metal compounds called gangue. Metallurgy involves basically three main stages: concentration of the ore, extraction of metals, and refining of metals. The process of separating gangue from the ores is called concentration of ores. In this process, the concentration of the compound of the desired metal is increased. The separation may be based on gravitation, magnetic separation, cross flotation, or leaching. The heavy particles of ores can be easily separated from the lighter particles of gangue by gravitational methods. Wilfley table method and hydraulic separation are the two methods based on gravity separation. Using magnetic separation method, the magnetic and non-magnetic ingredients in the ore can be separated depending upon their magnetic nature. Okay, this was the revision part. Now look at the evaluation part. All these questions you have to solve it in your notebook. First question, the compound formed from two units, namely cation and anions, are called ionic compounds. Define the following terms: minerals, ores, gangue, metallurgy. What is the principle of magnetic separation method? And draw a neat and labeled diagrams of hydraulic separation method, magnetic separation method. State any four properties of ionic compounds. Okay, so that's all for today's class. If you have any doubt, you can ask. Yes, you can raise your hand. If you have any doubt, you can ask. Yes, anybody have any doubt in today's topic? No doubt. Okay, ma'am. That's all for today's class. We can wind up the lecture. Thank you, students. Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can wind up the lecture, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, students.
हमें भी नहीं मालूम क्या वो दवा का किस दिन याद कराइए बे
भाई ना
इसको काट रहा